All right, thanks so much, Kevin, for your service and the Serenity Improvement Group for being here for over 4 years, I believe now in the Zoom era. What an opportunity and what a blessing. And Miss Elizabeth for giving me the opportunity to share my good friend Phil that I've spoken for a few times on this thing. It always seems it's around a holiday. I think I've spoken at Christmas twice, and we're on the Easter Eve this evening, and I find that's right where God needs me to be and God wants me to be. So thanks again, everyone, for being here tonight also and spending your time with the Serenity Improvement Group. My name is Curtis Johnson. I'm an alcoholic. By the grace of a very loving God, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you people, I haven't found it necessary to consume any form of alcohol or take any mind or mood altering substances since March 16, 2015. And for that, I'm grateful. I've also learned in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that gratitude is by far more than a word or a feeling. Gratitude has to transform and translate itself into a rigorous action of giving back that what's been so truly and freely given to me. And if I'm not giving that back, I'm a liar and a thief, and the truth's not in me, and that's why I'm here. I've also learned that this is a spiritual program. A lot of people think that spirituality is someplace out there, and I've learned through this program of Alcoholics Anonymous that spirituality is here. It's here and it's now. Just as the 10th step says, we've entered the world of the spirit, where I truly believe you are, I am, and this God of our understanding is everything. And it's the greatest thing that I can say it's ever happened to me in my life at the age of 71. But my sponsor, Tim H., says the last quarter of my life, I truly believe that there's a whole lot more on the way, and I can't wait to get there. I'll talk about that a little bit later, that one of my heroes from this program talked about. But I'm grateful to be here, and let me validate myself just a little bit. As I said, I'm 71 years old. I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 56, beaten to the tar, couldn't quit drinking the alcohol, had the repo man take my car, my Honda Pilot that I only had $10,000 left on. My wife said no, she's not paying for it. She couldn't take it anymore. You know, or get up in the morning and you walk down to the liquor store to be first in line at the to-go window and drink a half pint of vodka at 9 o'clock, throw that up and drink a pint, and go back home, walk that 3/4 of a mile almost barefoot, and get up the hill and come back again at noon, 3, 6, 9, 12, and do it again tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. But I truly believe that was part of the plan, and I'm going to talk about the plan tonight because my mother, my saintly mother, back in 1987, January, I think it was the 4th, that I was sentenced in federal court down in Miami, Florida. I'll talk about that a little bit. That I had to make a phone call with my wife, my in-laws, my daughter that was a month and a half old, and myself to my parents out in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I had to say, Mom, I've got something to tell you. She had just been out a month and a half before because Natalie Marie, our only daughter, had just been born. And I said, I've got to tell you something. I'm going to be going away for a while. I got myself in this trouble. And she stopped me in my tracks. And she said, Curtis, just stop right there. She said, I'm going to tell you something. Dad and I will be here to help and support Tina and little Natalie Marie. And we're going to pray for you, Curtis. Because one day you're going to understand that this is all part of God's plan for you. My response at that time was, now, Mom, that's not a real good plan. There's 96 more months to go with this plan. And she said, Curtis, one day you'll understand that this is all part of this plan. Today, folks, I can honestly say from deep within my own self-being that on the daily maintenance of my spiritual conditioning, I'm okay. And it's what this program has guided me and led me to. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life today. I can honestly say that anything that has happened prior to or even coming isn't going to matter, because what God has done for me has brought me into the moment, and it's brought me into the moment to where it's an unbelievable thing. I had a friend of mine speak at my birthday here just last week. Good friend of mine, Kirk H. He sits on the board of the Kentucky Man to Man conference with me, and he told a story about when he really saw the light. When you really know when you see the light, when we really know when we're there, and I'm there right now. And I'm there right now only when I'm contingent on that daily maintenance of my spiritual conditioning. that we talk about, that the 11th step talks about when it says we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. The word improve is pretty big. It's indicating that the God is there. My hero, one of my many heroes. There's many of my heroes on this screen tonight. Said, and he calls it the divine spark within. Don Major, passed away on the 25th of 2023. He's one of my heroes. Don hasn't gone anywhere. He's here right now. I truly believe, because this is what the spiritual part of this program has done to me. There was a long road to get here, just as was for each and every one of us. And if you're new to the program, this is the greatest thing that will ever happen to you. I guarantee you, because Big Book talks about it. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed this path. But we've got to follow the path. And there's people that are going to guide you. There's people that are going to guide us when we've been here for a while. There's people that are going to need help that have been here for a long time. It's the greatest fellowship I've ever seen or ever been around. As a devout Catholic, I love my church. I love this time of season. You know, I also learned in this program, and Chuck Chamberlain talked about that, being we're going into Easter tomorrow, there has to be a death before there can be a resurrection. We had to get rid of what's called the false self to really learn what the true self is. The self that we were brought into this world with. That being that came into this world as an innocent child. You know, and most of us ended up like Chuck Chamberlain told that story about those three little fish swimming out in the ocean, out in the deep ocean, and the big fish went swimming up and asked them how their day was going, and they going, "Yeah, day's going real good." And big fish went to swim away and looked at the little fish and said, "Enjoy the water." First little fish looked at the second little fish and said, "What in the heck is water? Do you know?" No, he didn't know. So let me ask the other little fish. And he asked the other little fish if he knew what the water was. No, he didn't know either. Those three little fish continued to swim around in the element of their being for the rest of their lives, not even knowing what they were doing. That's what it was like for me, until you people showed me the direction. It's really what it's like outside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I see in this violent and this turbulent world today. But is it really violent or turbulent? I don't believe so anymore. I'm an avid follower of a fellow by the name of Richard Rohr, Franciscan monk out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Talks of and wrote a book called Breathing Underwater, Spirituality in the 12 Steps. This man did a diagnosis when he was moved down to Albuquerque from Cincinnati, 1985, 1986. Of Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. Somebody had asked him, you know, what was there between Christianity and the 12 steps? And he said, well, you know, let me look and see. And he began to look into it. And as he was sitting at his new facility down in Albuquerque, they had these AA meetings at the parish, and they'd be out there all the time, all week long. They'd be in the parking lot before these meetings, smoking cigarettes, laughing, joyous and free, happy, going into that meeting, come out an hour later, do the same thing, stand in the parking lot. And they would ask him, they go, Father Rohr, why don't you come to one of these meetings? And he said, well, you know, I'm not an alcoholic. Your sign here says that this is a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I've heard he said that, you know, I drink wine at homily at the mass, but I don't drink the rest of the week. He said, no, I've got some priest friends that might need to go to this AA meeting. And he kind of laughed about that, but that was the truth. But they said, no, you need to come in. And when he started going in and went to several of these meetings for a few months, he said what he saw was honesty and the truth from a podium. People telling their story like I'm going to tell tonight, like each and every one of you have. You're unique in your own well-being. I'm the only Curtis J. Johnson that there is. Now there might be somebody with another name, but my wife, Tina Jo, of almost 41 years, at the end, April 30th of this year, will tell you it's a good thing, Curtis, that God didn't make two of you. And then she laughs. But Rohr went on to say that he said he just couldn't believe what he was seeing in the rooms. He said if the people upstairs in the church and the parish would understand and live like these people, their lives would change. You see, we've been selected, and I truly believe we've been handpicked by something by far way greater than anything I could have ever imagined. We've been picked because we had nowhere else to go. kind of like one of the greatest spiritual teachers of all times was probably the Jesus, and he was on his way to Jerusalem with all these disciples and told them, come on, follow me. I'll show you how to get there. And they said, no, we can't go there. And they continued walking. Some left and some stayed. But they left it, and he never told them what to do. He showed them how to get there. And this is what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous was. From Carl Jung to Roland Hazard, to Abby Thatcher, to Bill Wilson, to Dr. Bob, and here we are on the 30th of March, 2024. And I'm okay. And it's because of you folks. But Rohr went on to say that these 12 spiritual steps, they've been around for a long time. He said, I shouldn't be the guy writing about this. I'm a priest. He said, but the correlation's been around in all the spiritual parts of the world for centuries. It was never put into a book. And he said it had to have been a divine intervention for Bill Wilson, Dr. Bob, and all those that put the book together. The people that have coordinated the effort, you people that are here tonight. This is how it works. I think the greatest name couldn't have been anything other than this is how it works for us. This is how it works. So I'm grateful to be here and to understand that the moment I've been given in life today, the minute I wake up in the morning and I don't have time to get to my knees, the moment I take that first breath, I understand I've been given something way greater than anything I could have ever imagined. Because as we breathe in breath, we take in life. And if I breathe out breath, I give life. If I don't breathe in, I don't take in life. And if I don't breathe out, I don't give life. So the opportunity that I found in the programs of Alcoholics Anonymous and going thoroughly through the steps and doing what I've been told to do and getting into that 10th step where we've entered the world of the spirit, and the 11th step where we're talking about being in a conscious contact with God. Not just when we pray. Praying is fantastic. Praying takes the left front of the brain, the frontal lobe, and nullifies it, and it keeps it from thinking. Meditation's a different story. Meditation, we learn to be able to go inside to the darkness. And that's where most people have trouble with their lives. We don't like to face darkness. We had to learn how to like darkness. But from all darkness comes light. Even in the scientific world, there's nothing that's totally dark. There's light within darkness. And then there's truth within truth. There's different ways of thinking. I've learned today to be more of a contemplative thought process to where everything becomes neutral. And I learned that from my hero, Don Major. He called it persistent courtesy. Being able to accept the moment as it is without any type of retribution or retaliation. Understanding it's here, it's now, and that's it. But boy, I'll tell you what, that's not the easiest thing to understand because there's a lot of things we're human beings. But most people don't get this opportunity. But each and every one of us on the screen, I don't care if you're brand new, you're an hour into this thing, or you're 50, 55 years into this thing. You're here for the same reason I am, to better our lives, to be better people in God's world. And I truly believe that's why I'm here. I was born in a little mountain town of Missoula, Montana, January 23rd, 1953. I'm the old, I see Erwin and Sharon. I was the oldest of three wonderful children. Mom and dad have both passed away. My mother passed away a year after I came out of federal prison in 1995. I talk to my mother every day. She hasn't gone anywhere either. I truly believe that's the spiritual part of what this thing is about. The mystics and the spiritual teachers will tell us, don't wait and think you're going to get to heaven. You're already here. Boy, and I tell you what, when we're able to get rid of all that stuff we've carried around and learn to not play in the resentful world or the fearful future, that's what the human mind operates off of. The human mind works on fear, hate, and illusion. Concepts, a lot of it thought and things that hadn't even happened yet or things that have nothing to do with anything right now, yet we like to play with it. But I've got two other sisters. One just celebrated 66 years of age, Judith Ann, out in Scottsdale, Arizona, just yesterday. And I got to talk to my little sister. She loves her big brother. My other little sister is 9 years younger, and she's a flight attendant. She was a college professor for years and decided she wanted to be a flight attendant. So she's flying around the world having a good time, and she contacts me too. But you know, we were raised in Missoula, Montana. My dad was a basketball player for the Grizzlies, and he was good. He was a phenomenal basketball player. 2 years out of college, he played 2 years of semi-pro basketball for the Minneapolis Lakers with George Mikan and some other players. And my father had married my mother um, from Helena, Montana, while he was in college. And my dad got into business, and we went and we left Missoula and went to Helena. Went from Helena, he was with Western Life Insurance Company, down to Dallas, Texas, back to Helena, Montana, and then he went with Beneficial Life Insurance Company. We traveled out to Tanner's Lake, Minnesota, Cleveland, Ohio, back to White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and we ended up in Long Beach, California in 1964. A little kid growing up from the Montana to the Midwest area and ended up down when things were really getting going down in Southern California. We hadn't been there a couple of weeks, and two of my neighbor boys, I hadn't seen the ocean yet. I loved the water. We lived on lakes all my life. And two of my neighbor boys said, Curtis, why don't you see if your mom will give us a ride down to Seal Beach? It was about 3.5 miles, maybe 4. I think I can't remember the exact distance that we had to go. And I asked my mom that, and she absolutely. My mother was a saint, as I said. Anything I ever asked of her, she always did for me. You know, and these moves and all these moves, it was really something that built something around me because I was able to adapt to the situation, no matter where it was at. If I was going to be a part of something, I had to learn to be a part of it. And when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to jump back just for a second. When I was 56 years old, for the first, just short of 4 years, I was into this program, and I loved the heck out of it. And it was phenomenal. I sat on a couple of men's recovery boards. My sponsor was Tim H. And everything that we were doing, we had have a great big book study that's still on today. And I was sitting in a meeting and I watched 24 young ladies from a recovery center get ran out of the meeting by 2 old timers. One of them had said something about a drug and they effed them out of the room. And I didn't know how to handle the situation. And I'm not sure if that's the reason that I walked away for a year and a half, but I left AA for a year and a half. And it was the loneliest year and a half because I told you also that I was sober from June 3rd, 1986 until August 18th, 1994. Well, I was under indictment and then federal custody of the United States government, Federal Bureau of Prisons, for flying things that we were not supposed to be flying. And that was a whole different story, but it was really alcoholism. It was the alcoholism that came about of never being content with who I was or what I was doing, always wanting more. If I had $1,000, I needed 10,000. If I had 10,000, I needed 1,000,000. Million was great. 5 million was better. 5 million was better than that. 10 million's even better than that. And it was funny, and I'll tell you later on in the story how that all evolved, and I got into that, but it was unbelievable because the second week of February this year, I spoke for my good friend Chip H down at the Gulf Coast, Chip B down at the Gulf Coast Roundup. And after I got done speaking on Sunday morning, a lady had been on the one of the committees the night before, and she was from South Florida. She came up to me and she said, Curtis, I know your whole case. I worked for the U.S. Customs in South Florida when you were indicted and when you went down, and I just about cracked up. She said, you got to come down to Fort Lauderdale and tell your story. She knew there were a lot of government people that were involved with that. There were people political people, everybody was in for money, and it's what it was about. And it cost me a lot of time, but in life, but it was all part of that plan. But anyway, we had moved these seven or eight times and ended up in Long Beach, California. And this is where I really began to, when I reflect back on really where my desires came from. We were walking down this main street, going down to the pier in Seal Beach, and there was they called them head shops at the time. This is when, the Haight-Ashbury was going on, the Vietnam War was, all those things were going about, and peace and love was going on in Southern California. And we're walking down this street to go to the pier with these two boys. My mom had dropped us off, and there was this thing called Strawberry Fields, and it was a head shop, and they're playing Beatles music. And we're walking, and we're just little kids going into 7th grade. And I look over to the right, and I'm looking in this place, and all I see with these beautiful women with long hair and tie-dye dresses and no bras on. And the guys had long hair and they're smoking something, the incense going, and they're playing Beatles music. And I said to these little guys, I said, what in the world are they doing in there? No, they're in there smoking pot. I said, what's pot? And they said, oh, you'll get to know one day. I didn't even know what it was, but I wanted to do it. Just watching, they were having so much fun. It looked like what they were doing. So we spent the day there and we came back, and there began my real quest looking for that thing that Sandy Beach, one of our other old timers, talked about, looking for that high. I've always searched for something to satisfy my need. Whether it was the alcohol, the drug, the sex, the rock and roll, I don't know. But I would always go to the bitter end, no matter what I did, trying to get there. And I'd get there and it would go away, get there and go away. And then I got there and I got stuck and it wouldn't go away. And now I'm not, then came the disease of the real disease of alcoholism. But that was the beginning of my whole quest looking for where I ended up today, because I've always been looking for that high. I got into high school. I had a resentment with my father for a long time. My dad used to have to go to bed at 9 o'clock every night. Kids were still outside playing. He wanted me to be an athlete, an intelligent, educated kid, and an athlete just like him. My resentment was terrible. It lasted a long time. I didn't know that he was just trying to be the best he could for me. You see, we learned in life today that do not judge. Every spiritual teacher has a great, great, great one-liner. And the one-liner that Jesus always had was, do not judge. And when we don't judge, we accept. We become persistently courteous, like Don Major talked about in all our affairs. Accepting a human being as they are, as a God, child of God. There's a long way to go to get there. But so I got into high school, started playing basketball, junior year in high school, played at Robert A. Millikan High School in Long Beach, California. 1970, we won the large school California CIF basketball championship. I was the seventh man. Played against Jamal Wilkes, Donnie Ford at Santa Barbara, Bill Walton down at Helix in San Diego, all those guys. My father was also head of the LA women's track and field team. Let me tell you about my dad real quick. We came down to be in the business world in insurance when we were transferred down from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, down into Long Beach. My father was with Beneficial Life Insurance Company up on Wilshire Boulevard. He was a senior vice president as a young man. Within a year, he was with a fellow by the name of Ralph Sweat with LA Times Mirror out of Costa Mesa. They had been asked to come and start the development of the first cable company in the United States of America, in the world, actually. So I came from a wonderful family. We ate dinner every day at 5:30. The kids didn't talk at there. There's no alcoholism, physical alcoholism in that family at all. Each and every human being has the problem, many of the same things that we have, but there was no drinking problems there. We had a wonderful family. The only thing I didn't like when I brought friends over, because my dad asked them if they asked Rich Johnson how he was doing, and he started to tell him about his golf game, they were there for at least an hour. He told them every shot, 18 holes. But my father was a wonderful man. My mother even better. But I went into high school, and then in high school, as I said, we won the junior year, the large school basketball championships. And senior year, I was a starter on the team when we got to the semifinals. Lost to a team by the name of Vermont, a black Catholic boys high school in Los Angeles. Had phenomenal basketball players, and I was a great athlete. I was a thief. I was only 5'9.5", and if they put the ball on the floor, I stole it. I was that fast and that quick. My father had all kinds of dreams for me to be the basketball player that he always thought I was going to be. We went through high school, and as I got into high school, and I told if I go back for a second and talk about that first thing that I saw in Seal Beach, I always wanted that thing. And then I think it was around 8th grade, I had my first beer. Might have taken it out of the refrigerator. My dad would have a beer or two, but he never drank much. He drank wine or a beer when he would go with the guys, but not around the house. But one of the neighbors had some beer, and we had beer, and then you have wine, and you start you find the effect, and you like what it was. And then by the time it went to high school, on the weekends, I drank 2 3/4 cans, 16-ounce cans of Colt 45 stout malt liquor. It's all I could take, but that was enough. It put me right to where I needed to be, and it was courage. It was that liquid courage that I needed to go into the dance at I forget the name of it. It was at El Dorado Park, and we go in there every Friday night. I was love women. I have a heart for women that like no man could ever have, and I think it began with my mother. I just have a deep, deep, deep concern and care for women. And I loved women. I was scared to death of them. But boy, you put a couple beers in me and I could dance and I could talk and I'd fall in love right away. And that was just a young man growing up. And it was a phenomenal thing. I had my high school girlfriend and, this and that. And it was time to go on into junior college. And my dad, as I said, my father got into the business world pretty big down in Southern California. And he was really good friends with a guy by the name of Lute Olson. He was a high school basketball coach out of Huntington Beach High School. My father and my mother were one of the two co-sponsors of the LA women's track and field team. My little sister Judy Ann ran on had set two national records with some of the best women runners in the world. So they were still involved with all that stuff as I'm growing up. And Lute Olson was going to have me play. He was leaving Huntington Beach High School to go to Long Beach City College. I was going to be a guard for him. And I decided that I would just tick my dad off and take up tennis. And he didn't know that, but when it was time to go to junior college, I had played enough tennis. I was teaching tennis down at the Billie Jean King Tennis Park in Long Beach, California, and I went on to play tennis for 2 years at Long Beach City College. My dad was heartbroken, and I was off to Wisconsin to play tennis up in Madison, Wisconsin for the next 2 years. And boy, I'll tell you what, he was heartbroken, busy in the business world, but I was doing good. I mean, I went away to school, probably not a good school to go up to anywhere in Wisconsin. You go to school there, they got 4 bars on every corner. I think they go to the bar before they go to church or mass in the morning. And they sit there and drink, and it was just fantastic. I ended up got my degree in business and marketing and stayed there for several years up in Wisconsin. Mom had moved. My dad had went with Warner Communications and then went independent, and they were setting these cable networks all over the country. I had the opportunity. I could have worked for them, but I was still on my own. I wasn't ready to do anything. It was too much fun drinking and meeting women and just having a great time. I was a young man. I think it was around 27, maybe 28 years of age. I got a call. I was teaching tennis up in Wisconsin. I was going back to Southern Cal. I got a call from a friend of mine. He said, Curtis, I got a job for you. I said, no, man. I said, where's the job at? He said, down in Daytona Beach, Florida. I said, no, I'm not going. He said, oh, yeah, you're going to Daytona Beach, Florida. I said, no, I'm not going. I said, I hate Florida people. They try to come out and steal our waves in Southern California. When I started surfing as a young kid, there wasn't anybody out in the water. I thought I owned my own wave at lifeguard station number 10, just south of the Huntington Beach Pier. That was mine. And if somebody came from Florida and you saw their plates, or if you knew who they were, you'd let the air out of their tires. That's just the way it was. But yeah, there was no way I was going to Florida. They didn't have the waves that we had in Southern California. And he said, no, you're coming down. You're going to go into the business. You're going to go to work for a guy that's making a suntan lotion. They're making suntan lotion in a bathtub. I said, suntan lotion? I don't even get brown. I get burnt. And all we had back then that time was Sea and Ski, and it certainly didn't work. I see the dermatologist every month in Wilford till the end of my life. But the thing of it was that he says, no, you're going to come down here. This will be perfect for you. I said, well, what are they doing? Well, they're doing mass marketing on these pool decks. They've got 36 pool decks in Daytona Beach, Florida, that they have representation on, that they've got these little tiki huts out there. And you're going to put a boy and a girl at each pool deck, and you're going to teach them and show them how to sell suntan lotion that I don't even know what I'm going to try to sell. But they're going to come because the second week of, I think it is February, they have what's called Bike Week in Daytona Beach, Florida. And there'll be thousands of people there, and you're going to make a whole bunch of money. Not interested. And then he said to me, he said, no, Curtis, I said, the week after that comes the Daytona 500. And then there'll be hundreds of thousands of people there. And you're going to make even more money out there on those pool decks, managing those 36 pool decks that we were going to put out these products and marketing products prior to retail. And I said, still not into it. He said, all right, Curtis. He said, right after the Daytona 500, there'll be 250,000 fresh little college girls coming down for spring break. And your job is to make sure they get deep, dark, and delicious. I said, I'll see you next week. My sponsor Tim H tells me all the time that's the greatest story any young man could ever tell, and it was quite a story. I mean, I'm talking wet t-shirt contest, beer drinking contest, suntan. I mean, and I came up with these. I had all these folks at these 36 pool decks, and they're out there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and these women would walk out, and I tell the guy, if you take a woman's arm or or a girl to take a man's arm, always put the lotion on, look at him in the eye, and tell him you always want a person of the opposite sex to apply the suntan lotion. What it does is it decreases sexual tension, your pores will open up, and you'll get a much better tan. And they're just looking at you half the time drooling. Then you tell them, I'll meet you at PJ's for happy hour at 4:30. And that went on for 8 weeks, and it was unbelievable. We were making tons of money. And it's just was a fantastic thing. And then finally, at the end of those 8 weeks, I was standing on a pool deck with a friend of mine. His name was Joey Manchese. Joey was from Detroit, Michigan. His dad owned 6 of the hotels that we had there. So this is all marketing, hands-on marketing, actually. Because those girls, you tell them you don't want to get burnt your first day. You'll be inside for the next 3 or 4. You won't get back out to get tan. You're going to go home. You're going to peel, and they believe you. And it was the truth. I mean, there were lotions that had certain new things that would keep you from getting so burnt. You can't put oil on those types of things. But we're standing at this pool deck because Joey would hang out with me because these little girls would always come, usually in 4s and 5s. It was amazing. I mean, every week. I mean, the next ones leave on Friday, and the next ones come on Saturday. And this was just phenomenal thing for a young man anyway. I wasn't 28 years old or something like that, and I hadn't 27. And it was unbelievable. And these 2 long brown-haired girls come walking out, and they were living dolls. And I said to Joe, I said, Joe, which one do you want? He said, I'll take the one on the left. I said, dang it, Joe, that's kind of the one I wanted. And they came walking up to us, and I said, but I'll take the other one. It's your dad's hotel. And these girls came walking up to us, and I said, ladies, where are you from? And they said, Kentucky. And I said, where? I'd never heard that dialect of voice ever before. And they went, Louisville, Kentucky. And I fell in love. Year and a half later, we began dating. And in 1983, April 30th, we were married. And that was my wife today, 41 years. And I put that woman through, I'll call it HELL, twice. And she'll tell you that the 96 months that I played with the federal government was nothing compared to watching me almost die from the disease of alcoholism. But it's what I needed and what had to happen in order for me to be here today. So we dated by air for about a year and a half, and she went back home, but I started seeing her about every other week. We'd fly Delta to and from. I got transferred down into Miami, got into some flight school, met a lot of wonderful people, actually got out of the suntan lotion business. I had been down there and was in the suntan lotion business and had all the big hotels, the Fontainebleau Hilton, the Sheraton Bell Harbor over in the Bahamas, all the Caribbean, was doing phenomenal. But I met a fella that had a boat next to mine that was a very, very big attorney in the state of Florida. And he and his partner were civil attorneys. And he said, Curtis, I got a great job for you. I think you would fit right in here. And he said, I want you to come in and learn how to do some investigative work for civil malpractice lawsuits and things of that nature. And I said, I don't know anything like that. He said, I think you're going to be smart enough. Well, within that time of being with that law firm, I met a whole bunch of really unbelievable people. It was when Brickell Avenue, just south of Miami, was really being formed and made. And all the monies were coming in. It was the big trades were going on out of South America, and everybody was involved. I don't care if you were in the DEA, CIA, FBI, who or what you are, you wanted somehow in on the money, and I got in. And the next thing I know, we've got aircraft leaving Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport down to Barra Key, Columbia, and they had been going up on the Camp Lejeune Marine Base in North Carolina. And then we got greedy and bought 187 acres of land and built another landing strip right next to there so we can make twice as much money. And I'm talking a ton of money. And this went on for a few years until we were finally, when the government found out what we were doing, because there was a lot of things that were involved that they were involved with. They finally said, "You're done." And I got my sentencing. And when I got sentenced in Miami, Florida, and we pretty much knew it was going, that that was going to be all done. And it was a good thing that that happened, but it was really what alcoholism is about. As I said earlier, I was never content with what I was doing. I've drank all my life, and I always used to say when I first started getting sober, and even today I understand it in a much better attitude and idea. Why did this God make me wait this long? It wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't part of the plan. So I went away for 96 months. My last 5 years in federal prison, I was at Eglin Air Force Base teaching tennis to a bunch of lieutenant colonels and a base commander for the last 5 years. Now, that's just not a good thing to do. Your wife's still in Kentucky. Your daughter is now 6 years old, 7 years old, and you're teaching tennis down at Air Force Base. So I was sober for a long time, but just being sober is not the solution that I was looking for. And when I got out in 1994, I was able to met some wonderful people there too. I got another college degree well in my last 5 years. And it was funny. I told you I spoke down at the Gulf Coast Roundup in February. And while I was at the Gulf Coast Roundup, I could look out the podium, the window, and look across the Chattahoochee Bay and see Eglin Air Force Base. And I told Chip was actually stationed there. He left the year before I got there. And I said, man, this is going to be a tough one for me standing up here and talking because I spent some time over there. And he said, oh, Curtis, you know what you're going to do. And it was just unbelievable. But I came out of federal prison, and Tina and Natalie had moved back to Kentucky. That's where she was from Louisville. She was the baby of five kids, and she had worked for some wonderful people. And I got into business right when I got out, and I traveled the world, and I've been successful in anything I've ever done or touched in my life, and was consistently making a ton of money. I'd start a business, be working on the marketing part of businesses for people, doing consulting work, thinking I was happy, joyous, and free, and was never happy, joyous, and free at what I was doing. I'd do it for a year and a half, 2 years, and then do something else. My wife said, can't you just slow down? I didn't know. But it was really the disease of alcoholism, the disease of the mind, the body, and the spirit. You cannot take care of the mind and the body without first taking care of the spirit. The big book talks about that. So I step 2 and 3 are in the position I am therein. So here I've gone a whole lifetime doing this thing and this is when the God came in. And this is when the God came in and said, okay, Curtis, that's enough. And the only way that God really could do anything with me was just take in the physical nature of alcoholism and stop me in my tracks. And poor Tina and little Natalie Marie. I always thought it was about money, property, and prestige. My daughter needed a new car. She's in high school. Yeah, I'd buy her a new car. We always had money. We always went everywhere. We did everything we ever wanted. But nobody was ever happy. Dad's not happy. We hurt people. We hurt more people than we hurt ourselves. We don't even know. But this went on. And finally, when that first final day went, and I walked away. Tina said, can't you just stop? And I couldn't. And I said, I'm going down to the liquor store. And I hoped it was the last time. I had gotten there. I had two neighbor ladies that had lived from the country, and they had a place down there. And they'd always told me if I ever needed any liquor, go into their garage, and there was liquor there. And I got a quart of moonshine and drank the whole thing, drank a whole bunch of ant poisoning, and tried to kill myself. Walked down to the liquor store, passed out, and got thrown in the hospital. God said, you're not done, Curtis. Next day, I was taken down to a detox center at the age of 56, and it was all over the beginning. And for the next 4 years, it was phenomenal. My life was unreal. I got sober. I began doing what you people were telling me to do, but I experienced that thing in that meeting, and I walked away, and I didn't understand it at that time. Today, I could understand it, to be able to accept that. Those two are God's children. It doesn't matter what happens in life. Whatever we're faced with or whatever we do, we accept it. Let God be the director. It tells us that on page 62 in the big book. But the thing of it is it was a phenomenal journey, because for that year and a half that I walked away, that was the loneliest year and a half I ever experienced in life. Way worse than 96 months in federal prison. I'd found the solution. I didn't know what had happened. When I called my sponsor, Tim H., And I said, Tim, had to call him and tell him I had to stop. I resigned off one of the boards that he was the president and director of. And I said, Tim, I'm going to walk away. And then that year and a half later, I called him. I said, Tim, he said, hey, Curtis. I said, I've got to get back in the rooms at Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, we knew you'd be calling. We were waiting for you, buddy. Come on down. Big book study this afternoon. And I drove in my car and got down to that big book study that afternoon on March 16, 2:15. And I haven't stopped. I got so deeply stuck in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole program, the inner self, the part of helping people and being a part of this thing, the recovery, the service, the unity of this whole thing, the triangle with the circle around it. I can't get out, and I don't ever deem to or want to get out. It's when my life really began to change. And then once we got into this thing and I got back and I started working, I started helping people. Today I sponsor a whole bunch of folks, men and women alike. I've been given a gift. I've been given a gift that God gives to me to give away. And it's a phenomenal thing. It's something I could have never dreamed of, but it's what it's about. It's what this program is. You know, that old fellow that we talk about, the old Jesus, not the old Jesus, but the Jesus says there's only two things in life that we really need to understand. We need to trust in God with all our mind, heart, soul, and strength, and like unto it, we need to help our brother and sisters as we'd want them to help us in our time of need. It's the basic program of life today. To be there when someone is in pain or suffering, one of our fellows. You know, this is the goal, the real part of the whole program. And I can't be aware of that yesterday. I can't be aware of it maybe tomorrow. I'm only aware of it at the moment I'm experiencing. And that's where we come in. I've learned to be in more of a contemplative thought process where everything becomes neutral. I can't play in the political world. I have my views, my visions for it, but there's nothing I can really do about anything or anything else. It's what I do. What I've learned to do through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you people will be the destination of how I end up at the end of the day. And it's a gift because the normal mind, the normal human being doesn't get this opportunity. And it's funny because there's so many different entities, different religions, and different groups of folks that have realized what the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are really about. You know, I've been given a gift. I'm 35 minutes away from the Abbey of Gethsemane, and many of you might know Brother Luke is one of my closest friends also. I get down there every week, sometimes twice a week. And it's unbelievable because when I even know I'm in that direction, my life can change. You know, we lose people. We lose people in life. You know, the one inevitable thing that happened from the moment we came into this world is we're on our way out. But are we really on our way out? I don't believe so. The mystics and spiritual teachers will tell you, don't wait to think you're going to heaven. We're already here. I truly believe. Because this thing here is way, 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 way greater than anything I could ever imagine. We sat in church last night for the Good Friday service for an hour and 40 minutes, watching people, just watching people. I've never been so content in my whole life, but I'm that content all day long. I'm that content when I go out into the woods. We have a beautiful piece of property and talk to the deer, the turkeys, the birds, even the dang raccoons. I'm aware, and I can't be aware if I'm not here. And that's what this program does. We go through all our character defects. We understand, I don't believe God's taken one of mine away, but I know them all. And if I'm going to lie, I know how to stop before I lie most of the time. We're not saints. But this program is just such a gift for each and every one of us. And it's a message that we get to carry and we get to give as a return. And when we see that light in that eye, when we see that we've helped, that light will come back to us and that light will light us. My good friend Don Major, I'm going to tell a quick story, two little stories before I close. Don's last 6 messages before he passed away last 2023 in July 25th. He changed his format in his talk that he taught for over 40 years. He didn't talk about being drunk. He said, I've got to tell you folks something. He said, for 42 years, every single word that they said in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous has told me the truth. Everything it said has told me the truth. He said, it's phenomenal. He said, but for 42 years, there's something, and this is something that Don and I and Tim had gone over for many, many times. I kept saying it for years. I was enthralled with a paragraph on page 63. And Don read that. He said, I don't want to die. He had cancer. He was already in hospice. He knew that moment was coming. But he said, I don't want to die for Sharon and my kids and you people that he had devoted his life to. He said, but what I've learned from this book is, and he went on to read a paragraph, and I'm going to read just the end of it. And he went on to read this, and he goes on to say, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, as we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter, we were reborn. Don went on to say, I don't fear death today. I don't fear death today. He said, because if the big book has told me the truth here, I can't wait to see what it's got coming. I never believed that I would have that ability to understand just how important every breath I take is. I don't have time to waste. I don't have time to hurt people. I have time to be a part of something greater than me. That this divine spark that Don talked about lives divinely within each and every single one of us. And I was looking for it all my life. Chuck Chamberlain, I think, told about sitting in a chair. He'd been sitting in a chair for 30-some years. Didn't know what chair he was in. Didn't know what he was talking about. Hated life. Everything was it. And then he said a story about for the last 37 years, he found what was in the chair, and it was the God. It was him. It was all part of this thing. I told you about my two little grandkids. They were just down here. They left Wednesday this week to go back up with my in-laws up in Ohio, and my daughter and her husband, and Grayson Matthews, 11 now. Wonderful young man. 2 years ago, he went to space camp. Really smart kid. Hadley Marie, she's 9. Beautiful young granddaughter. She's got every ism that there is. I told my wife and my daughter that, and they said, oh, Curtis, you don't know anything. Now they say, I think you might be right. But, we know we see it. We know when we can tell it. But they're just wonderful, wonderful grandkids. And about 5 years ago, would have put them at 4 and 6, I think. We were up in Johnstown, Ohio, visiting, and I was standing in the backyard of their house, and my son-in-law's father, Steve Sossman, good Baptist guy, never drank, never drugged, never did anything. He's talking with me. He said, Curtis, I got to tell you something. He said, those two grandkids of yours talk about their pappy all the time. I've never seen kids talk about somebody like that. And I said, oh, Steve, they talk about you and Janet all the time. He goes, no, those little kids talk about you and Tina, and they talk about you all the time. And then he looked at me and said, I think it's that AA stuff. And my head kind of swelled up, and my heart kind of shrank. And I have to realize that, the objective is to shrink the brain and enlarge the heart, not the other way. The ego got there for a minute, and I felt really, really great. About a month and a half later, they were down at our house when we lived in Louisville. Had a beautiful house, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath, and we were at the big table on a Sunday afternoon eating fried chicken. My mother-in-law that passed away 2 years ago, she was 91 years old when she passed away, Doris Jean. And she made her famous chicken dinner. And we're all sitting there. And at the very other end of the table, there were 9 of us at the table. My in-laws, everybody was there having this chicken dinner. My granddaughter, Hadley Marie, she was either 4 or 5. I don't remember. She's eating her chicken, looks up at me. She goes, hey, Pappy, you going to one of those meetings tonight? I said, wow, where did that come from? And I looked around the table. I looked at Natalie Marie, my daughter next to me, my wife, Tina. I looked at my in-laws, my mother-in-law, my daughter and her husband. And then to the little right side of me was Grace and Matthew. And I said, Hattie, Pappy's going to one of those meetings tonight. Because no matter where I'm at, whether it's up in Ohio, Kentucky, Disney, our place down in Perdidoki, Mexico, I'm going to find a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous because it's you people that showed me my direction and my path. We were sitting there, continued eating. She just kept eating away. About a minute later, I got tapped on the right shoulder. And my grandson looked at me and said, Pappy, what do you guys do at those meetings? I didn't know what to say. I had tears come out of my eyes, down my cheeks, as I looked at every eye at that table again, and I let God tell him, Grace and Matthew, this is where Grammys and Pappies go and learn how to be better Grammys and Pappies. His response to me, as he pointed his finger at my face, was, Pappy, you keep doing that. Folks, that's the aura. That's the present of that divine spark. That's the God within us, giving us the direction to be better people today. Again, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for your service, and everyone for being here, Miss Elizabeth, for inviting me, and Phil, my friend, and all my friends that are on here, and each and every one of you. May God bless you and keep you as we trudge this road to our happy destiny. My name is Curtis Johnson. I'm an alcoholic.